Hello, KKC Consulting viewers. Welcome back to another episode. This time we're in for a treat because this is going to be the first episode of KKC Chats, a new branch in which I speak to business professionals who are really making differences in the industry. With me today, I actually have the youngest guest of KKC, a 17-year-old all the way from America. Andreas, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
My pleasure, bro. My pleasure.
And now, just a really quick introduction about Andreas. Of course, he's going to talk a little bit more about himself as well. But one liner that I could tell you is this dude is 17 years old, making $300,000 a month. Now, Andreas, we're going to really just dive into everything. But do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, 100%, bro. I mean, my one liner, if you want to call it that, from the beginning, like a year and a half ago, is when I first got into business, sales, psychology, all that stuff when I was 16 years old. And in the past year and a half, I got my first business to 36K a month. I ended up actually running away from home, which is a funny story. I'm sure we'll go over that.
Mm-hmm.
And then becoming the number one rep in the biggest B2C sales training company in the world, doing $3.5 million a month in cash collection. And then I ended up managing that entire team and training them with my business partner, Yash. And then now I do consulting work. And so I make about 65K a month profit. I'm like in my pocket, and then around 300, 350 a month revenue. That's kind of
That's
what
awesome. That's awesome. Now, just to confirm, you're in B2C, right? Not B2B?
B2B. B2B is the majority.
Now you're in B2B,
Yeah,
but before you're in
exactly.
B2C.
Before the 3.5 million a month, that was B2C, but now it's B2B.
3.5 million a month?
Yeah, that's when me and Yash were managing the entire sales team.
Oh, to get okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Did you feel, of course we'll go into the more in-depth part of it, but do you feel that you liked one more than the other, comparing B2C to B2B?
The reason I went into B2B was because I liked the B2C. So basically, to explain the model, in B2C, it was just selling sales training to salespeople essentially, and it's the biggest B2C sales training company in the entire world. They're an Inc. 5000 company. And so I realized like I love creativity. I love building. That's why now I put out content, for example. Like I love new things and innovating and figuring stuff out. And so I realized rather than trying to figure that out for this one business, doing $3.5 million a month and trying to get them to 5 million a month, which like isn't that entertaining because once you figure it out, then it's just a ton of repetition, just doing the same right things over and over and over again until it happens. So I was like, rather than doing that, if I go into B2B and then I work with other B2C companies, then I can figure out all their sales processes and it's more entertaining for me because I can figure out like a new one every week.
And then that way you're also learning a lot more rather than
Exactly.
just doing the
It's like a
same thing over
dopamine
and over
hit
again.
across like 10 different industries.
Fair enough. I mean, that's a really smart way to go about it. But before we delve into that, let's rewind all the way back. You mentioned that you ran away from home. Do you mind giving a little synopsis about, your journey before the whole business cycle?
Yeah. So before I ever got into business in the first place,
Yeah, like your really quote unquote villain arc, let's say.
my villain arc. Interesting. I think for me, and this is the way I always put it, like in psychology, if you feel like you don't fit into a group, you always assume inferiority. So, for example, you could be smarter than everybody else around you, so you're not able to connect with any of them, but you'll always assume that you're worse than them. When in reality, if you're smarter than all of them, you're better. But
Hmm.
that's because of the social pressure of being like everybody else, which is kind of the trend across society, if you will. And so, me, like in high school, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, I have a very high IQ, right? Like I always did really good on everything. I've taken IQ tests, etc. Like I took another one like a week ago and I aced it. And so I couldn't even measure like how high it went up. Um, and so like I had the intelligence of the kids that would like sit alone and just study and just work or whatever that didn't talk to anybody. But I also had the social capabilities of the people who would like go to parties or whatever. And so I had a bit of both. So it always felt really weird to me because it was like I was in this unique position that nobody else was in. And I felt like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like I shouldn't be here.
Charismatic nerd.
A charismatic nerd. That is a fantastic way to put it. Exactly. So that was kind of like my arc of like I didn't feel like I fit into any group per se, and so I always felt inferior. I felt less than. And so my entire journey, it's kind of like if you think about psychology of childhoods, if somebody has an addictive parent, like one of their parents was addicted to alcohol, for example, then they can get on a thing where it's like, oh, I'm never going to drink, right? Or they get into a toxic relationship and now they're scared of it, and then they never end up getting married. Like stuff that
Mhm.
happens in your childhood usually dictates how you're going to be in the future. If you
That's
never
true.
felt loved by anybody, then you're constantly craving people's love. And so you get into a lot more
Hmm.
toxic relationships, you break
Hmm.
friendships a lot faster, etc. So for me, that variation of that was I always felt inferior and less than. And so naturally, my natural default mode, I guess, if you will, is trying to find a way to win, to become superior. So
Mm-hmm.
for me at the beginning, it became sports. And quickly, I went from like being decent, not really playing a lot, to playing 5, 6 hours a day, recovery, rehab, like everything, just going
Mm-hmm.
fast, 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 fast until I made it semi pro within like 6 months of like trying hard. And
Mm-hmm.
so like that taught me a lot of like, this is my purpose right now is trying to become superior, trying to be better than, because I've always felt less than. And then eventually that became business for me when I got injured in sports.
Fair enough. Now, we did talk about this yesterday on a really quick call, but remember the Harvard study that I told you about?
Yeah,
What dictates someone's, future success? And the funny thing is, it's postal code, right? And many people don't really think about that, but it's something that you can really, like, you can see why that's true. You can see why
it makes sense.
postal code really impacts your future. Now, you mentioned earlier on that you had the strive to win as a result of you perhaps not feeling like you were winning earlier on. Do you mind talking a little bit more about that? What did not winning mean to you?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest issue a lot of people have in their lives is that they never actually analyze themselves. They don't know why they do what they do. If you want to construct your life for success and you want to engineer it so everything you do is moving towards a goal and an outcome, you need to understand who you really are in the first place. If I didn't understand that craving for wanting to become superior and wanting to do more and be more and have more, then I wouldn't have had the drive, the motivation to do what it took, even through the pain and suffering and everything else to actually make it happen at such a young age. And so, like, when it comes to me, like, understanding myself, that's one of my superpowers. A lot of other people, they'll find themselves chasing relationships or constantly feeling attached to people, but they have no idea why. Because if you understood why and what happened in your childhood that created that, that's a superpower. Because then if you go into business or you go into any field whatsoever, now you understand what makes you you. And what makes you you, it can be counted as a disadvantage, but it's also a great thing. It's
Hmm.
what makes you you. It's your uniqueness. If somebody, for example, always felt alone as a child, and now they crave connection, they crave being around other people. Yeah, that might be a bad thing because now they lose child friends and they lose relationships and everything else. But you could also view it as a great thing because it allows them to connect a lot faster with people and they understand people at a much deeper level. So like if you don't understand where that comes from, you'll never be able to play it to your benefit, and then you just become like everybody else.
Hmm.
So that's my view on it. I think people have to really sit down and think, what are my patterns? What patterns do you have? Do you tend to lose friends very, very quickly? Do you tend to make friends very, very quickly? Do you tend to always feel jealous of people? Like these are all tendencies you have to realize and then start to psychoanalyze yourself to a degree of like, where does this come from? What happened in my earlier life that made me this way? Because that will be what allows you to become great. That is your superpower. If you don't have a superpower, you're in this world because you just become like
Hmm.
everybody else.
Fair enough. So then let me ask you a question on that topic. Would you say that every strength has a bit of a weakness, every weakness has a bit of a strength?
Absolutely. And I think you get to remove the weakness to a degree. And it,
Hmm.
it just becomes a strength. Like for me, okay, me wanting to feel better and do more and be more, yeah, you could say there's a weakness because I'm always going to want more, but is that really a weakness?
I see what you mean.
If somebody makes relationships very, very quickly and they also lose them very quickly, them losing those relationships, is that a weakness? Because I think you could turn that into a strength. What if you learned how to actually analyze if somebody has your best benefits at heart, or if they genuinely don't care and they're doing it for themselves? Your ability to let go of people quickly now becomes a superpower. Versus somebody else doesn't have that ability. They get very attached to somebody. They realize that person's trying to hate them or trying to hurt them.
Hmm.
I mean, for example, like in a toxic relationship, and they don't have the ability to let go.
Hmm.
So like I think it's about I think even the weaknesses are a strength in themselves. So I think those things only give you strength. I think it's only a weakness if you don't understand it. And that's where I think understanding it is the key, because if you don't understand it, it will be a weakness. But if you
Hmm.
understand I can let go of people very, very quickly and you're conscious of it, I think that becomes your biggest asset. For example, that's just one random example. But I think the weakness is only when you don't understand it, but when you truly understand it, that weakness becomes a strength that you get to use to your advantage. That's how I think about it.
That's fair. And I do appreciate that thinking because, I mean, another question I do want to ask you, and usually I would say if we could go 5 years back, but you're 17, we can't really do that. So if you could go 2 years back or 3 years back, talk to me about what your weakness would be then, and then what you think your weakness is now after analyzing yourself.
Yeah, I think my weakness back then, again, it came down to that feeling of like wanting to be superior in a sense. Again, that's a
Mhm.
great thing, but the way that it turned out as a negative back then is it was very easy for me to push people away. I would try and connect with
Mhm.
people because like another thing about me from psychoanalyzing myself is like I grew up very independently. I had great parents, loving
Okay.
parents, but I had a brother who had like some issues with drugs and stuff like that, and I love him to death. He's a great guy now. But so my parents naturally had to put a lot more time into him, as any parent, any good parent would.
Of
So
course.
I grew up very independently, having to figure stuff out myself. And it'll sound small, but like making my own meals, like walking home from school, not really seeing anybody once I got back, like just doing my own thing, going to bed, seeing them in the morning or 2 days later, whatever it was. And so because of that, I always craved connection. So it's very, very easily for me to connect with people very, very quickly and like make friends with
Mhm.
people quickly. And so back then, that created like a tendency of like wanting to latch on to people in a sense, where like
Mhm.
if they pushed away, then I would constantly be trying to like get back in, get back in. And so then in the relationship, the dynamic was like there's this person who is quote unquote ahead or superior in that friendship. And then I was always below because it was like me chasing the attention, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And that became a weakness for me back then. But then understanding of like why this dynamic happens, that's what turned it into a strength of like, okay,
Mhm.
I'm chasing, rather than trying to latch on to 3 or 4 people. If I make a bunch of different friends in different industries with different scopes of knowledge, I can figure out who truly wants the best for me. And then I can latch onto those people deeper. And that just becomes what's called connection, which is a good thing. And so
Mhm.
it was, again, turning a weakness into a strength. It used to be a weakness. Now it's one of my biggest assets.
That's
I
fair.
would say everybody around me makes me better and I make them better. And that's a
Okay.
result of being able to figure out who truly wants the best for me and who I want the best for, and then being able to connect with them on a much deeper level.
There's actually this one, and I love to make references. You probably have realized from different things that I take out, but I was watching a short clip from Batman, the animated series, and essentially Joker was telling Batman the story of how there were two people who were mentally unwell and they were in asylum. And one day they got together and they were like, "Yo, we're going to escape this place." They go to the rooftop of their asylum and all they see beyond them is freedom. The building is just 10 meters away. All they have to do is just make that jump. Now, the first guy, he does it no problem. He has no fear of heights. He's completely fine on that aspect. The second guy, however, he's super scared. He can't do it. Now, the first guy says, "Hey, don't worry. I've got a flashlight. Let me flash the light and you can act as if it's a bridge and you'll just walk through safely. You don't have to make the jump." Now, the second guy, and this is where it gets really interesting. The second guy says, "No, I think you're going to just hurt me. You're just going to switch off the flashlight when I'm halfway walking through." And what it really meant to me was the fact that, it really sounds like a stupid story, but when you think about it, a lot of people tend to do things without really analyzing like what's going on in the big picture. Because no matter what happens, whether he turned it off or kept it on, he was going to die anyway. He was going to fall down. The bridge of light didn't matter because he never thought about,
Yeah,
is the bridge even real? Like, is it like, can it even happen? Is it even possible? Right?
yeah,
And a lot of people, I feel, and I'm not trying to take myself out of this picture as well. I'm 100% within it. A lot of people they don't really see the bigger picture. They don't really understand, okay, so if I work my life towards this one thing, this is going to be my salary. This is what I'm going to be able to have. And I feel there's a massive disconnect in terms of, like, I'll give you a prime example. I wanted to be an engineer all my life, and it was something my mom really wanted for me. And my mom really wanted me to just work really hard, get that, 80, 100K job. And not that I'm saying it's bad, I think it's fantastic, right? It's a
yeah,
livable salary, it's wonderful. But what I started to realize is that the lifestyle that I wanted, it didn't make much sense to really pursue that,
yeah,
right? And when you slowly start to really think outside the box, that's when I feel you really do the most thinking within it, right? When you really start to realize, is the flashlight really, like, is it really going to help me cross the bridge, right?
because
And
even
that's
on that point, there was even a period of time, and like I'm sure we'll go into this later, but there was a period of time where I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, months on end, completely alone.
mhm,
My entire goal was building as much mental toughness as humanly possible. I wanted to have the
mhm.
mental toughness of like a Navy SEAL without ever going through Navy SEAL training.
Oh
That
yeah.
was my goal, word for word, my goal. And I started thinking, and there was, I think it was David Goggins. He had a video and he was talking about like your uniqueness, like who you are as a person. And I always thought of like, I'm a very emotional human being, naturally. I just am. right? Like
Mhm.
I feel a lot of things and I feel very, very strongly. Not that I put a lot of weight on it. I don't think that it affects how I act, but I feel them, right? And I, at that point, always thought like, oh, I want to build this mental strength. I want to build this mental toughness. Like I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I always tried changing that emotional aspect of me and like hardening myself, I guess, in some way. And what I started realizing, and this is something that David Goggins said in the video, and I heard it 1,000 times and it never hit me. But then this one
Mhm.
time, I remember I was sitting in my office and it was like 11 p.m. and it just hit me like a sledgehammer and I could not sleep. And he basically said, he was like, whatever's unique about you, whatever's up about you, that's what makes you you in the first place. He said, if I had never been that fat, overweight guy who failed all these different things in my life and never did with myself, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And I
Mhm.
realized it was like, that's a great point. Rather than trying to focus on removing my emotionalness in myself, I need to use that as my strength, my leverage, because that's what makes me so good at sales. That's what makes me so good at negotiation, communication, because I understand those little aspects. Somebody shifts their body language a little bit or tilts their head a little bit, I can read that. I know what's going through their
Mhm.
mind. And removing
Mhm.
that would be removing a key part of me that makes me me in the first place. And so then
Mhm.
eventually I had to figure out like, okay, so there's a balance. I need to keep that side of myself and all the sides of myself because that's what makes me me. And I still need to be able to channel another side. For example, if somebody's extroverted or introverted, I'm actually very naturally an introvert, like very naturally
Interesting.
an introvert. But I've learned so well how to channel the extroversion. And it's the same thing in this concept. Like I'm a very emotional person naturally. So I've had to learn how to channel the other side, which is like I feel all these emotions and I could feel sad, I could feel happy, I could feel motivated, demotivated, whatever it is, but it doesn't have any importance on the actions I take. I could feel like, but I still got stuff to do and I'll still do it. And so that was the balance rather than trying to remove that part of me. And that goes back to exactly what you're saying with the flashlight, because like a lot of people, if you're not viewing the bigger picture, if I zoomed in and it was like, oh, I want to build this mental strength, I want to be able to do anything, then I would try and remove that emotionalness. But in the bigger picture, that's what makes me me in the first place. So why would I remove that? And so that goes exactly what you were saying.
That's fair. Let me ask you a question on that actually. So a lot of people feel that you should be working towards an emotion. You should be working towards happiness and never feeling sadness. What's your thoughts on that?
It's bullshit. If you look at the downwards trajectory of society, it's all based on people's feelings, on what they feel. You should focus on being productive. A man does not get true happiness and fulfillment by just going to parties and doing stupid shit. He gets it by being productive. Progress equals happiness. The more productive you are, the more fulfilled you feel because you're filling your role as a man of providing and taking care of and being strong. And people focus so much more on what they feel than anything else. You feel like going to a party. You feel like doing drugs. You feel like drinking. So you do it. And so I think that's the downward trajectory of everything. And I think if you're always focused on happiness in the short term rather than the long term productivity, you're never going to truly be happy in the long run, number one. And number two, you're going to be a less productive member of society. Because you can be focused on, I feel like drinking, I feel like doing drugs. So you're going to do it. But when you're able to weigh those out in your mind and be like, yeah, I feel like doing all this stuff. And this is what I was saying a second ago. I feel like doing this, but my feelings don't really have any input on what I'm actually going to do. I have the emotion, I have the logic. And if I know logically speaking, productively speaking, I have to do this thing, it doesn't matter what I feel in that moment, I'm still going to do it. So
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in like, I think making decisions based on your feelings and chasing a certain feeling, I think is stupid. And I think it leads to an unproductive and unfulfilling life. And it doesn't allow you to provide for the people around you to the degree which you need to. Because even on another point on this, like if you're driven by yourself, your own feelings, you'll never be as strong as the person who's driven by something else, by society. Because think about it this way, if you have one guy who all he cares about is getting this car or getting this thing or having more free time, whatever it is, the morning he wakes up and he feels tired and everything's going to shit and he just lost his best customer, his best employee is trying to leave, and he feels terrible, he's not going to push through it because it's about him. If you have another guy who's doing it for his family or for his impact for society, me, for example, I'm doing it for all the other kids that I used to go to high school with who are sad and they don't do anything about it because they don't have another vehicle. If I have that mission of doing it for something outside of me, which I think inherently is productivity towards society, if I wake up tired and I wake up like it doesn't matter because it's not about me. So I'm going to take
Mhm.
the exact same actions, no matter if I felt sad or happy, because it's not about me. It's outside of me. So I think those are kind of the two components that are lacking in people. Like number one, I think focusing on productivity, but the way you focus on productivity is having something outside of yourself that you care about. And most people don't have that.
So let me ask you on that then. What's your thoughts on men's mental health as a whole?
I think the way you fix your mental health is just by progressing, by doing more shit. I think running around all day telling yourself, and this is everybody does this, and it's the saddest thing in the world. They walk around constantly telling themselves, I'm sad, I'm sad. So how are you going to feel? You're telling it to yourself so many times. If you say something enough times with enough conviction, eventually you will start to believe it. And if you believe it, that'll dictate how you feel, the actions you take, the results you get, and everything else. So I think fundamentally the concept of mental health, yes, it's a thing. I think in making it this massive victimization, I think that's a flawed concept in itself. Because the more you tell other people that thing, the more you will believe it. From the very beginning. I used to be that guy. In high school, there was a point in time when I would every day tell myself, oh, I think I'm depressed. But once I stopped telling myself that and I started telling myself, no, I can be productive. I can do, I work hard. I'm loyal. Then I started feeling good again because it's about productivity. I think as a man, the more you do, you will feel the impact of doing. A couple of days ago, for example, my friend, he had a birthday party, right? And he doesn't know it to this day. I paid for it. He thinks, I don't know, I convinced him that I spoke to the owner and got it for free or something, which I don't know how the hell that would have happened. But like I paid for it. Me spending those couple $100 on his dinner or whatever, that felt 1,000 times better than if I went and bought myself a new Rolex. 1,000 times better. And this goes back to the principle. If you do stuff outside of yourself, it will feel better than doing it for yourself, and it will allow you to do more. So I think going back to the concept of mental health, like number one, if you're constantly telling yourself, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, you're going to feel it. No shit. It's pretty obvious. Number two, then what do you replace that with? You have to replace it with something else. And I think the thing you replace it with is with an outcome, a vehicle, a goal, a vision. I want to do this. I want to make more money. I want to support my family. I want to get in better shape. And you having that drive of like what you're going to do, I think is what makes you happy at the end of the day. It's again, if I said my goal is to take care of my family or to pay for this dude's birthday dinner or whatever, and I felt fantastic doing it, I couldn't feel fantastic in that moment paying for his stuff and supporting him because he's a great friend and a super loyal friend and feel depressed at the same time. I could not physically do it. I could not feel that emotion and feel depressed at the same time. It does not make sense. So then what that leads me to believe is I need to have enough of those moments of true fulfillment in doing stuff for other people and for myself and growth to counteract any feeling of sadness that could ever come about. So I think that's how you beat it, is just by constantly trying to progress and trying to move forward in some aspect of your life. If you think about most people, if you think about high school, for example, there's a lot of those people who you can see them from a mile away. You can spot them. Their shoulders are hunched over. They breathe shallow. They talk soft. They don't make eye contact with you when you speak. Those people, how much are they actually growing in their aspects of life? Are they getting in much better shape every day? Are they working out every day super, super hard? Are they spending a lot of time with their family? Are they hanging out with other people who are like them? Are they going online, even if there's nobody in their school that's like them? Are they going online trying to find other people like them? No, they're not. And I can tell you that answer with 100% certainty without even knowing who the hell you're thinking about, because it's just how they act. But if they were focused on getting in better shape and making more money and becoming more successful and learning new things and having great relationships with their parents, I don't think it would be possible for them to be sad or to feel any of these different variations of mental health. I don't think that would be a possibility.
So then let me challenge you on that, right? You mentioned that you could beat it, which I agree with. You could definitely beat it. You could take steps towards minimizing or even destroying it completely. So then does that mean that you believe that it can exist in the first place, that you can be depressed?
I think you can have a feeling of it. I don't think you can have it. I think as soon as you say you have it and it's part of you, it becomes part of your identity.
And you're giving power towards it. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. You give power towards it. Even the fact that you name it in the first place, calling it depression or calling it sadness or calling it stress or any of those variations, even just giving it a name gives it power because you're telling yourself it exists. And that's another problem. But yeah, I think like it can't be part of your identity. It can't just be part of who you are, because then obviously you're not going to be able to get rid of it. You can't ever really change who you are fundamentally. You can change beliefs. And I call that like identity reframing and stuff. But but you can't change who you are fundamentally. So if you attach that to who you are fundamentally, obviously you're going to keep feeling it, and then eventually become suicidal, and then everything goes to shit because you're
Mm.
believing it's part of you. When in reality, it's not part of you, it's just another feeling. And every feeling is temporary.
That's what I'm interested about. Because at the end of the day, like, Alhamdulillah, I'll say it for myself, I haven't really gone through any major calamities. Like, I have both my parents, right? They haven't passed away. I didn't have any real calamity that really struck a chord towards me. But I will say, though, that on that front, I believe that depression is real to an extent. I believe that you can definitely do something to mitigate it. You can definitely do something to reduce it, whatever it might be for you. Maybe it's music, maybe it's just even reading the Quran, maybe it's something philosophical for you. You never know. But I feel that being depressed, as you mentioned, it's an emotion. It's something that can come, but it can also go away. It's not something that's supposed to stick with you, right? Now, I know someone and his like a really close friend of his passed away. The dude was really, really sad, and rightfully so, right? A lot of us would be really sad if a close brother passed away, like a friend.
Of
Now,
course.
what I really respect about the dude is that even though his friend passed away, he decided that, you know what? I want to make my friend proud. He's looking at me from above because that's what he believed in. So let me try to take steps towards building myself to then be able to help his family out, to be able to build a legacy
Exactly.
which he remembers him for. Right?
Yeah.
And there's this there's this very funny well, it's not even funny. There was this boxing match essentially, and they were sitting in the corner. The guy was about to just give up and everything. I believe it was Mike Tyson versus I can't exactly remember his name, but essentially he told his mom before his mom passed away that he's going to beat Mike Tyson. Now, this was Mike Tyson in his prime. No one could beat him. But the funny thing is that the coach, he sat him down in the corner of the stool and he said, listen, you're doing this for a better purpose. You're doing this for your mom. She passed away. You're doing this for your mom. You better beat Mike Tyson. It's unheard of, but you better do it. And guess who won the end of the fight? Right? Everyone was shocked. I think if you put a parlay on that, you would get like 200 times the returns
Yeah.
minimum. Right? It's so funny.
Throwing parlays.
The topic. On that topic though, let's talk about you really deciding that you wanted to extract yourself from that society because that's a massive jump. It's not easy, right? I wouldn't be able to do that personally for myself. So what really convinced you? What was that moment where you're like, I need to leave this society and I just need to go somewhere else to really pursue my dreams?
A lot of it came from, and you and I spoke briefly about this yesterday, a lot of it came from what I was talking about, like the dark energy. I think pain is the language of success. If you are, and I gave you this example yesterday, if you're going through, because I was obsessed with them for a while, if you're going through Navy SEAL training or like Hell Week, for example, in that moment when you're going through the surf and everything's and you're dehydrated and you have no sleep and you're having to do all this physical exercise and you feel like your body's literally breaking down. You have bones that are broken and everything else. In that moment, it's not a fairy tale like, oh, I'm gonna feel so fantastic and I can't wait to
It's not the
hug
light
my
at the end of
family
the
again.
tunnel.
It's pain. That's what it is. It's pain in that moment. And I think the person who succeeds in the long run is the person who can be driven by that pain and by that negative energy. I think that's a successful person in the long run. I don't think it's a person who's driven by this pleasure or anything. In psychology and human behavior, it's a well known fact. The two biggest drivers of human change are pain and fear of future pain. It's not pleasure, it's pain and fear of future pain. And so, naturally speaking, if you're more driven by
Interesting.
pain, you will be more driven than the person who's driven by pleasure. Naturally, according to human psychology. And so, like, going back to that, I think being able to feed off that in the early days was a superpower for me. I realized that very, very early on. Me going away from all these old people that I used to hang around, even talking about high school, even before I ran away from home, even just in high school, there was a day I made a decision. And after that point, I sat alone every single day during lunch, free period, breaks, anything, completely alone, just working on my laptop, researching, taking meetings, whatever it was. And it's because that feeling of being alone, being lonely, feeling that pain, I fed off of it. Like that fed me. It drove me. It was like this feeling of like I am different. I am not like everybody else here. I feel this pain, I feel this loneliness, and it is what pushes me forward. It's hard to put
Mm.
into words, but I think if you do something long enough on a long enough horizon, I think the only way to be able to push through every single challenge that comes about and stay at your peak mental state is by being able to feed off of pain. I think that's it. We spoke about this yesterday as well. Humans, their natural fear is a fear of death, right? And the fear of pain and fear of future pain, that comes from a natural fear of death, is what it comes from. And so even if you think about that, like if the ultimate fear any person has is death, as soon as you think about like, oh, this pleasure, and I'm going to feel this like fairy tale story and it's going to be great. But then as soon as you get in a position where you have all this pain from that fear of death, the fear of death will always overtake that. It will overtake that fairy tale story you create in your own brain. So if you're driven off of the pain, and the more pain that happens, the better you feel. And the more pain that happens, the better you feel. And it's a cycle that is the only way that no matter how much pain you feel, you will keep going. Because it's like a great thing to you. It feels good. It's like a dopamine hit. It's really hard to describe. But so at the
No,
very
I
beginning,
get you.
what got me through those initial phases of being very lonely and running away from home and everything else was being able to feed off that pain and having that feeling of like that dark energy. That's what drove me. And it drove me stronger than anybody could imagine. I think that's what it was.
So let me ask you on that forefront, right? What do you think is the difference between confidence and arrogance?
The difference between confidence and arrogance. I think arrogance is fake. I think arrogance is something you project to get an outcome that isn't true. If I go and say I am the best business person in the world, that's arrogance because it's not true. I don't have anything to back it up. And if I say that, I'm probably not going to say that for the sake of saying it. I'm probably going to say it with an outcome in mind. If I'm having a conversation, I want to, I don't know, get them to focus, I might say that. So if I say something that's fake with an intent of getting something out of it, I think that's arrogance. I think confidence is just being able to say something that's absolutely true that you've backed up time and time again to where it cannot be disproven. And it's just who you are. If I say I am the best salesperson underage, I can factually say that because I have the data to back it up, the numbers to back it up. I have the statistics to back it up. I trained the sales team alongside my business partner for the biggest B2C sales training company in the entire world. I think that says something. So like I can say that. That's not arrogance. But if I say I'm the best business person in the world, that's absolutely fake. That is absolutely false. If I say I'm the best business person that's a minor, that's also fake. Because I know one or two other guys who are ahead of me, who are also 17. Now, am I going to beat them? Yes, of course. But for now, I can't say that because it's not true. That's the difference.
I appreciate that because the difference between confidence and arrogance, when you really ask people, I feel that a lot of people inherently, and I'm not taking myself out of this bubble either, they're jealous, right? And it's jealousy of the fact that sometimes, and we all have these tendencies where we waste time, where we're not productive, where we don't live to our full potential. Like there's this beautiful word in Arabic, it's called ihsan. And I encourage you to search it up as well. Ihsan is essentially the understanding that you must achieve excellence no matter what you do. It doesn't matter. If you're sweeping the floors, you have to make sure you're doing it to the best of your abilities. If you're a janitor or you're, Bill Gates, it doesn't matter. You have to ensure that whatever you're doing, you make the outcome more beautiful than when you first stepped into it. You achieve excellence no matter who's watching, when they're watching it, how they're watching, it doesn't matter. You're always achieving that excellence. And that idea, it really resonates with me. Not that, I'm achieving ihsan 100% of the time, but over time, I really do feel that I will be at a state where I can confidently say that, yo, I'm trying to achieve ihsan. And it's something very important because going back to the whole jealousy aspect, me personally, I feel that anytime I'm jealous of someone, of something, it's usually, and this is my own personal belief, it's usually an insecurity that's channeled towards me. It's like I'm not sure if you've watched Naruto. You probably haven't, but essentially it's in the very beginning episodes, they would throw a weapon and that weapon would bounce right back at them, right? And it was almost as if they were hurting themselves. So I think jealousy is almost a branch of that in the sense that, okay, you're jealous of this person, but what steps are you taking towards rectifying that, towards making yourself ultimately just feel better, right?
I agree. I think jealousy of a person is a terrible thing. I think comparing yourself to other people, I think is completely different. And that I think is a good thing. But I think jealousy in itself of a person specifically is a bad thing because it's also just admitting that somebody is better than you. And I think like, I don't have beliefs because they're true. I have beliefs because they're useful. And I think believing anybody is better than you, I think is not a useful belief. They can be
Mhm.
better than you at a certain thing, but they're not a superior human.
I agree because
That's my
it's
belief.
very interesting. A lot of people they believe that some people are more inferior, some people are more superior. I don't have that mindset. I don't believe that, one person is better than another human being at everything. I don't think
Yeah,
that's possible. Maybe
exactly.
they're better at the things that really matter, right? Like perhaps making money, being able to be more empathetic, being kind. Maybe they're better in those aspects, but they're not better at everything,
Yeah,
right? So I feel it's a useless argument to say that one person is better. I mean, unless you're trying to go for a big balls play, it's really useless to say that you're better than someone at everything there is to, you know,
yeah,
on that forefront. But let's take a really quick switch. You mentioned earlier on, and I didn't know this, but you ran away without telling your parents, right? Talk to me about that journey. Like how did you find out about your parents' reactions? Because one thing that the audience doesn't know is that you still want to be able to help your dad out, right?
yeah.
You still have that connection with your parents and you still love them very much.
I still
So
love them.
really, yeah, talk to me about that. Because a lot of people in the audience, they feel that there's a disconnect. That okay, I ran away from home. I don't love my parents. They were shit people, right? That's probably kind of that.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk on
So
that?
I'll explain it. So it's the actually exact opposite. I think the more pain somebody goes through, the stronger they will be mentally. It's that exact mindset I was talking about earlier. The more pain, the better you are. And naturally, from how I grew up, middle class family, loving parents, sports, like very comfortable childhood in a sense. I never had to worry about where am I going to get food tomorrow? Where am I going to sleep tomorrow? I never had to worry about that. If you think about it, if you have two people and one of them is always taking care of everything and he's always been comfortable and never had to worry about anything, and then he tries to start a business, that day when everything goes to shit and everything gets really, really hard, and he doesn't even feel like getting out of bed, and he has clients calling him because they're not getting results and employees calling him pissed off, whatever it is he really going to push through to the next day when he's never gone through anything hard in his life? I don't know. If you have somebody else who his entire childhood had to worry about where am I going to get food tomorrow? Where am I going to sleep tomorrow? And that guy, one day he has an issue with one of his businesses and it's like a bunch of clients were leaving and this employee was pissed off. It's like, dude, I don't give a I have to worry about where am I going to eat tomorrow. Now I have a client calling me. So what? Get over it. I'm going to deal with it because he's gone through more stuff. So it seems like less for him. It's not
Mhm.
as stressful for him. And so I think about it the exact same way. My childhood, I didn't have to go through that stress that builds you mentally. And so I started realizing if I truly want to become the entrepreneur that I want to become, if I truly want to be as successful as I want to be, and I want to grow up and I want to be mature and I want to be independent, I cannot do that living in an environment where no matter what happens, if I win or lose, I'm still taken care of. I still have food on the table. I still have a bed to sleep because my parents love me. I couldn't do that in that environment. I had to put myself in situations so uncomfortable, so absurd, that I truly found out who I am, and it builds me mentally, makes me independent and more mature. And so me leaving home, it wasn't because my parents treated me badly, it was because they treated me too good, if anything. So I had to. And that was the best decision I've ever made. I left and I built myself, and then I come back a man a couple months later. Where now, whenever I got this penthouse in Houston where I grew up, so I can be around my parents. I came back from Europe and I got this place. I take them out to dinner and I pay for everything every single time. Like I get to do what I want to do, and now they're proud of me because they view me as like my own man. Versus before, I was just a boy. I was just a kid. I never had to do anything. So I think that's the difference.
Let me ask you on this forefront though. Did you feel because running away from home is, a big thing. Did you feel that a little bit of guilt in the sense that maybe your mom was crying, maybe your dad was super worried?
No, never. This will sound really weird. I never realized that that's what I was doing, running away from home.
Hmm.
Like it was a weird I viewed it as I bought a one-way ticket and I'm not coming back home. But it never clicked that it was like actually running away. Like I never even considered that. It was the weirdest thing. I don't know why. Even looking back, like it seemed like almost normal in that time. Which looking back,
Hmm.
it's the least normal thing I possibly could have done. But like it seemed normal in that moment, so I didn't feel any guilt about it or anything. In fact, I had an entire plan laid out of how I was going to do it. So like I go to dinners with my buddies and like we would take pictures and I'd send them to my parents. During my birthday, we sent them a video of everybody singing me happy birthday. Like going to run clubs and taking pictures there. Like we got a dog. I sent them a picture of the dog and us adopting the dog. I sent them like a picture of like my new place and everything. like me with all my friends, so that they would feel more comfortable, like, oh, he actually has a life there, like he's doing good. So like I literally planned this entire thing, like I strategized the entire thing. Like obviously they wouldn't like it, they wouldn't love it, but I think the sacrifice was worth it for the reward that I would get on the other side. And now I can absolutely say it was worth it. If my
Hmm.
brothers are in a different place and I want us all to reunite, I can fly them all out. If I go to dinner with my parents, I can pay for all their stuff. If I go out with one or two of my old friends that I'm still friends with, like to this day, the majority I'm not, like 99%. There's like the one or two occasional people, right?
Hmm.
If I go out with them, I'll take them to a nice place, I'll pay for everything, and it has no impact on me. And it makes me happy. And
Hmm.
so it was absolutely worth it. And I had zero conscience for feeling guilty about any of it because I was so certain in the decision.
Let me ask you though, because I just kind of want to glimpse into the timeline itself, right? Because when you left home, how long did it take you before you really started to see like money happening, or were you making money before you left
I was
home and it
making
just
money
carried
before.
on?
I wasn't
I
making a
see.
lot of money, so I got my agency to 36K a month was my highest month. I think
Hmm.
like 15K profit from that or something like that. That was like my
Hmm.
highest month, and then that's when I decided to run away because that business fell apart. And then that's when I decided to start taking sales a lot more seriously, get into that Inc. 5000 company, etc. And then that's when I ran away.
I see. I see. I see. So that makes like that gives a little bit more context in the sense that so you ran away from home. You, like of course you worked really hard at that time as well. That's why you had that money saved up, and then you were able to have a place for yourself. It wasn't like you were sleeping on the streets or anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then it was more so because when you first told me running away from home, I imagined something completely different. I thought like sleeping under a bridge and
Getting a
you
rope
know
swag and running down the street.
I thought I was like, hey, I need help like that
No,
type.
no, not like
But
that.
this makes more sense. So it was more
Yeah,
like a disattachment in order for you to really question every single belief that you had in your mind, question every system that's going in place so that you can construct it, reverse engineer it, a term I'm pretty sure you love a lot, reverse engineer it so that you can create something that's unbreakable in a sense, an
exactly.
unbreakable will.
You can't, in order to reverse engineer your brain and rebuild it, I believe in engineering your entire life for the life you want to live. And you
Mhm.
can't do that in this comfort fairy tale land. You don't truly know who you are until you're going through that hard shit and you're feeling the pain
100%,
and you're feeling
100%,
the
yeah.
pressure. Like you were talking about the marathon yesterday when you were explaining to me,
Yeah.
exactly that. When you're comfortable and you know it doesn't matter if I work an hour or no hours or 15 hours today, I'm still gonna have a bed, I'm still gonna have food because my parents are gonna take care of me. You don't truly know who you are. You have this vision of like, oh, I want to do this thing and I want to do this, I want to do that, but you don't truly know who you are fundamentally. When you're going through the shit though, and you're working every minute to where you don't even feel emotion anymore. Like you just go numb and you're going through it. And every single second you want to quit. You don't want to move. You don't want to walk. You don't want to talk. And you do it for another 16 hours. That's when you start to find out who you truly are, how you react under pressure. How do you act? How are you with other people? That's when you truly find out what you're made of. And in order to be able to deconstruct yourself and rebuild it, you need to know what you're made of in the first place. So you got to take it apart.
Hmm.
And so, me moving away from home, it gave me an environment where I could deconstruct myself, my own mental beliefs. I could deconstruct what do I believe in? Who am I around? Why am I around these people? And just being in that solitariness of just being completely alone through the stress, through the pressure, I uncovered who am I?
Hmm.
What do I believe in?
Hmm.
And then from putting that all apart, I literally wrote all my beliefs on a piece of paper that were guiding my life. What values did I have that guided my life? What rules did I have around those values that guided my life? This is something Tony Robbins talks about. People, they think about values, they don't think about rules. If your core value is love, for example, if that's your core value, you will seek love, but what are your rules around it? What has to happen in order for you to feel love? And I'll give you an example. Somebody, they could be in a relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, and if her rule for feeling love is that you have to text her at least 5 times a day, for example, and you only text her three, you can view that as, oh, I'm giving love. Like I don't text anybody 3 times a day. But her rule is five. So she's not going to feel the love. If somebody's rule for feeling love is, I don't know, cuddling, and the guy works really, really hard, and so he doesn't have time to cuddle, she's not going to feel loved, even if he's putting in all that work, working 16 hours a day for her, and loves nothing more than her. She's not going to feel loved because her rules don't align. And so I had to deconstruct, like, what are my values? What are my rules for those values? What are my belief systems? And after I could write that all down on a doc, on a piece of paper, and break it apart, then I could start reconstructing. What do I need to value the most? What do I need to value second and third and fourth? And what are my rules for feeling all of those things? And literally putting my brain together again, engineering it again for the life I wanted to live, the success I wanted to have. And so moving away gave me an environment where I could do that, exactly to your point. And I think anybody should do that. And it doesn't have to be moving away from home and running away from home. It could also just be, I don't know, trying to run a marathon like you did. You're going to find out who you are. If you've never trained for a marathon, you try to run a marathon, you'll find out really quickly. You'll find out how you are. You'll find out, you'll start telling yourself, oh, but like I could just quit right now. I could just stop. Why am I even doing this? Or some people, they'll feed off that pain. But you'll truly understand in those moments. And that allows you to reconstruct yourself, which is what creates success.
And even on that, it's so interesting that personally, any time that I feel that I've learned the most, it's because of some sort of suffering or fear of pain in the future, right? Like I'll give you an example. When I was running the marathon, so everything till the half marathon point, it was bearable. Like it was hard, yes, but it was like, okay, I could do this tomorrow as well. It's okay. It's not too hard, right? And me and my buddy, so I ran the marathon with another friend, Adam, so shout out to him as well. But we would essentially just run pretty long distances before the marathon as well and just convince ourselves that we would be ready. Even though the max we ran was like 14 miles and the marathon was like 26 miles, right? Now, we would just convince ourselves that, yo, we'd be fine. It's okay. And having that delusion, I feel, is so important because it's so funny. I remember it really clearly. Like I ran from, you probably wouldn't understand this, but I ran from my house to another city.
Yeah.
So at that
No, I get
time,
it. I used to be an athlete. I ran my first half marathon when I was 7. So like
no, no, I meant like, sorry, what I meant is that you would understand, like I was gonna say Milton to Oakville, but you wouldn't understand that, so I had to change it up. Yeah, no, so I meant to say that like from Milton to Oakville, that's a far trek, let alone a run, right? Now, the funny part is when we would, have that delusion for ourselves, it'd be so funny that when we finally did the marathon, as soon as like it was so funny. As soon as we hit the halfway mark, that's when the shit started getting hard. That's when it really like, oh shit, we want to stop now, right? But just being able to just persevere through and just keep going, even though there was at least like 7 ambulances. I saw one guy having CPR done. I was just like, what the shit? What's going on, right? Like, because you don't
yeah.
you don't think about these things when you're running 13, 14 miles, but every step after that, it gets increased like double, triple harder, but at the same time the rewards are double and tripled as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So then when you finally cross the finish line, I remember I ate so much sugar as soon as I crossed the finish line just because of the carbs, but I really had this sense of let me enjoy this pain. I'm very proud of myself for doing something of this nature, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah.
But now let's take a turn, right? We talked a lot about getting inside your mind, understanding who you are as a person. Let's talk about the business side of things. So I'll honestly just toss the mic to you. Talk to me about scaling your businesses from 15K in profit to now, I think you mentioned 120.
Yeah, 65K profit in my pocket. So, not my
Sorry,
business.
so 15 to 65, right? So talk to me about just even scaling from, 30 plus K to 300K, like that 10x. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a completely different business. Number one, so my first business, like after I got to 30K a month, it failed, it flopped, and it was because like I was still in school, and so the model that I had for every client I brought on, I had to have like 4 or 5 appointment setters that I'd have to hire and manage. And so me being a high school kid who had 4 hours to take meetings after school and having to manage 30 plus appointment setters, like it was not viable. It wasn't, I couldn't do with my current skill set at that time and the amount of time I had available. And so now with the new business, the consulting business, we literally started 40 days ago, 40 days ago. And I think I've personally taken home, I think 85, 87K so far and like profit from it in the first like 40 days since launch. And so, I mean, is there any specific questions you have about it?
More so, okay, let's start with this one. What are some of the skills that you believe are very important for scaling your business to that success?
I think you have to pick a skill. So, like, how I think about it is like the biggest mistake people make, young people, is they'll be like, oh, I'm going to start this business, I'm going to get rich. And I think it's the
Mm,
stupidest thing in the world. Because fundamentally, what is a business? It's using skills to solve problems. That's what a business is. Now, the issue is when you're running a business, you have to have sales, you have to have marketing, you have to have operations, you have to understand team management and leadership and all these different skill sets. So you're taking 10 skill sets that you know nothing about and trying to master all of them at the exact same time. Stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's not going to work out. So what I started to believe in is like, rather than trying to do that to where it's going to be way slower, pick a skill that you resonate with. So for me, I didn't like sales. I didn't like it, and I still don't to this day. But I understand it at a very deep level. And it's because of the psychology, because of how I grew up. I had to understand how to read people very easily. I'm relatively intelligent, so I can understand like what they're thinking, etc. And so like sales came to me naturally. And so what I ended up doing is that's why I went into that Inc. 5000 company where all they do is sales, because it's the biggest B2C sales training company in the entire world. And so I started with them very, very quickly. I became the best guy. I was collecting more than the rest of the team combined, like I said. And then I ended up training that team. This entire time, rather than trying to build 10 skill sets every single day, when I was just a rep working there, I was taking 30 to 35 sales calls a day, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end. So obviously I'm going to progress at this one skill set faster than anybody else versus the guy who's out there trying to work on marketing and sales and operations and leadership and management and everything else. He's going to progress slowly at all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to master this one skill set a lot faster than he will because I get more repetition.
Mm-hmm.
The third step, in my opinion, is after you master that skill set and you get a ton of repetition with it, you start a business around that skill. So what I mean by that is, for example, right now, what's all of my marketing? All of my marketing is sales. It's literally just recordings of me objection handling people. That is my marketing. So it uses my sales skills. How do I get clients? I have to sell them. I have to sell the leads. So it's using sales. What is my service delivery and my fulfillment? It's helping other companies sell more. So everything in my entire business is sales. If you take a guy like Ravi Abuvala, for example, his thing is marketing. That's the thing he mastered. So if you think about him, for example, how does he make content? His content is all about how to become better at marketing using his skill set. How does he acquire clients? His entire thing is like, if your marketing is good enough and makes people warm enough, you don't need sales. That's his entire angle. And so how he gets clients, how he makes sales is by being so good at marketing that he doesn't even need to be good at sales. Again, marketing. How does he fulfill for his clients? He helps them get better marketing, build VSLs, build funnels for them, help them with their content. So like he picked a skill set, he mastered it, and that became his entire business. I picked sales, I mastered it, that became my entire business. So I think fundamentally the best way to like progress at a young age and actually make very, very serious money is you have to pick a skill set, you have to obsess over it, become undeniably good at it, have results to back it up, learn from a mentor on that skill set to become very, very good, and then launch a business using that skill. That's the other reason it's so easy to destroy all the kids in high school, statistically, is because they're learning 8 different subjects at the same time that 90% of it they're never going to use. And so obviously if I focus on just one thing, I'm going to become better than all of them. And I'm going to get more results. It's the exact same thing. And so that's my core belief. I think master a skill set and then use it to start a business and you're going to make a shit ton of money. It's going to be the easiest thing in the world.
Let me ask you though, so what about, because when you talk about like, let's say an entrepreneur, for example, and they're learning all these different skill sets, so marketing, sales, operations, hiring, like leadership as a whole, would you say that in the long run, when he finally starts to get that pattern going on and he masters all those skills to, I wouldn't say masters, but he starts to get really good at those skills, would you say that in the long run that person would beat you?
Yes, and absolutely. And no, they wouldn't beat me. After I start the business or completely around sales, now my entire business is around sales. Now I'm at a point where I can learn marketing and operations and AI and everything else, which is what I do now. But the best way to get to your first, 30, 50K a month profit is you master a skill set, you get very good at it, you launch a business off the backbone of it, and then you generalize. Versus the other guy, because the point that I'm at now is that I got from 0 to 65K a month profit in like a year's time or like a year and a half, whatever. The kid who started at the same time, who's been generalizing the entire time, he's still not making any money or making, 10K a month. So eventually he'll get to the same point where I'm making 65 grand a month profit in my first 30 days of launching the business. He's making 5K a month or 10K a month or whatever. And yeah, he has a little bit better general knowledge of everything else, But now what advantage do I have? I have capital. Capital is leverage. So then I can pay a guy like Eddie Malou, for example, who I pay for one-on-one time. He charges $3 or $5 grand an hour. And I can teach him. I can pay him to teach me marketing, to master it. And he has a business that does over $1 billion revenue for their clients every year. Mm-hmm. So now is this original generalizer who's now making 5 or 10K a month, is he going to progress faster, or am I going to progress faster learning from the guy who's mastered the skill set, getting one-on-one coaching?
That's a fair point.
Capital as leverage.
That's a fair point. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Obviously me. If I want to learn operations, same thing. Right now, I just hired an assistant who lives in London. So now she's doing all my stuff, saves me time. I don't have to do any of the menial small tasks that don't actually have a day-to-day impact. He's still doing all of them. So now I'm more leveraged than that guy who's been trying to generalize the entire time. So now I'm going to become a better generalizer than even he is at this point, because he's been generalizing, trying to learn from YouTube or from mentors who have coaching programs for 5K for 3 months access or whatever. Versus I can just get people's one-on-one time who have mastered a skill set, hire an assistant. Now I have leverage. I'm going to grow at an exponentially higher rate. And I have a better network as well. So in every aspect, I'm more leveraged than that guy is.
That's a fair point, because I never did think about it from that aspect. In the sense that you do now have more leverage. You have capital. You can now tackle things at a much faster rate. Even though at that point, maybe they're better than you at marketing, operations, whatever else. You can now like double, triple, quadruple the speed that you're learning the things.
It's an age-old tale. A lot of those like short phrases and stuff, people like, they think about them, but they don't actually act by them. Divide and conquer. That's what people said back in the military days. Divide and conquer. That's how it goes. It's the exact same thing in business and anything else. Divide and conquer. I have 10 different skill sets. Rather than trying to tackle all 10 of them at the same time, I'm going to master one and then use my mastery of that one to get capital, to get a network, to build software, whatever it is, to get more leverage. And then I'm going to go into the second one, marketing. And since I now have capital, I'm going to pay the best people in marketing, and I'm going to learn it like that. If you look at my account, I went from 0 to, I think I have 10.5K followers or something in 35 days of posting.
No, I saw that was very impressive.
It's not because I'm a genius. It's because I paid people who are extremely good at content to teach me by the hour. And I learned and I got better and I hired a team. I have more leverage. I have more capital. So I bought better equipment. I bought a better penthouse that has different backgrounds and stuff, which helps me with the content, obviously. I hired an editor and a videographer and everything else. So like now I have more leverage. So I mastered content faster than the guy who started making content, also doing sales and operations and everything else a year ago, who now has 2,000. Now that I've mastered content, I'm going to keep building on it. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to grow extremely fast. That's my entire goal. But now I'm moving into operations now. So now I'm building the back end. Like I'm even, and I'll drop sauce right here, right? So I have to innovate. I have to think of like, how can I innovate in this new area, which for me is operations, and learn from the best people. So I'm learning from the best people, and the innovation that I came up with is I realized my entire USP, like unique selling point, if you will, is the fact that I don't sell anything. That it's completely free. Like I don't do any coaching. I don't sell a course. I don't do any of that.
Alex Hormozi. Just like Alex Hormozi.
That's the leverage point. What does Alex Hormozi not have though? He doesn't have a free group or a free community that people know about on a widespread scale. He doesn't have a low ticket offer except for a book. He doesn't have a community. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make this free group, and I'm going to have a $97 a month group, which everything's going to be in the free. They can only go into the $97 a month if they want like literally direct group coaching and stuff. So for the cheapest price possible. And if you're in the free, if you get like 25 invites, for example, 25 people you add to the group, you get to join the $97 a month completely for free. If you get like 150 invites, you get a one-on-one session with me. And so then it just becomes a virus. It's just spreading and growing and growing and growing and growing. That's operations. That's what operations is. And I learn from the best people, then I put their knowledge together, and then I innovate and I create my own new thing. So now I'm going to master operations faster at a much better rate, at a deeper level of understanding than, again, the guy who was generalizing from the beginning. And then from there, I can choose what skill set I want to go into next, and I'll master that as well.
That's fair. So talk to me about this then. Obviously, there's going to be a difference between 17-year-old Andreas and 16, 15, 14-year-old. So if you could go back in time and tell 15-year-old Andreas, or even the audience who's trying to get to where you're at today, what advice would you give them? I
think if I went back in time and spoke to my old self, I wouldn't say anything. I'd just look at him and tell him to keep going. Like, I mean, it worked out. Like it was fine. If I had to give advice, who do you want me to give advice to? What specific avatar? Because I think it's different depending on who the person is.
Fair enough. Let's say someone who wasn't like you, but is in a similar position to 16 or 15-year-old Andres in the sense that, you know, they're not making too much money. Actually, let's take out the money aspect. They're not making any money at all.
Mm-hmm.
No money at all. They're trying to grind, they're trying to get that, 100K job. They're trying to just make their parents proud. What advice would you give them to just start the beginner's guide for it?
Focus not on the making money in the business, focus on building discipline. That's why most people quit and never make it, is because they don't have the discipline. If you have all the business knowledge in the world, but no discipline, no mental toughness, you will not succeed. That is a fact. And so I wouldn't focus, like, this is where so many people go wrong. They'll watch all these different courses and videos and stuff, and they'll do a couple outreach messages and everything else. And then a week later, they quit. Done. Because they don't have discipline. So I'd prioritize discipline over everything. The way I believe in building discipline is you need to build self-confidence. The way you build self-confidence is by saying you're going to do something and actually doing it. And massive mistake, massive thing I see people do wrong. They'll go and they'll be like, I'm going to do 1,000 cold calls today. I'm going to do 1,000 outreach messages. I'm going to do all this great stuff. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to get the best results for this person. And then that day they get to 300 cold calls. Oh, I'm tired. And then they quit.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody says, oh, I'm going to study this. I'm going to sit down and study for my math test tomorrow for 2 hours and I'm going to ace that shit. They do half an hour. They get a notification on Instagram. They go check their phone. When you do that, people don't realize the worst part about that isn't the fact that you didn't do the study. The worst part about that is that you told yourself, I'm going to do it, and you still didn't do it. So what are you subconsciously communicating to yourself? You're subconsciously communicating, I say, I do things, and I don't do it. I don't have what it takes. Exactly what you just said. And I think if you don't even believe in yourself, you don't even have belief in yourself and your own word, and it doesn't mean anything, how are you ever going to achieve shit? You don't even believe in yourself. How is anybody else going to believe in you?
I was just about to say that.
That's not happening. So I think the first steps is building discipline. So the way I would tactically do that is I would set goals, targets, but not a goal as in like, oh, I want to get here. A goal as in like, I will not go to sleep until this is done. And I'd make them small things to begin with to build the self-confidence slowly, right? I'm going to do 100 push-ups every day or 50 push-ups every day if you don't do a lot of push-ups, right? I am going to watch 2 hours of educational business advice every single day this week. I am going to speak with my family and tell them I love them once a day, minimum. Just small targets that you're going to do no matter what, and you will not go to sleep until it's done. If you say, I'm going to tell my parents I love them every single day, and you get home and they're already asleep, go wake their ass up. I love you guys. Good night. Like, you make sure it gets done, no matter what. Because go to the end of that week, even though you're not rich yet and you haven't succeeded yet, you've told yourself, I say I do this and I get it done. You built self-confidence. Second week, you add it up a little bit. Maybe you say, I'm going to pick a business model by the end of this week. I am going to learn a skill set. I'm going to decide on a skill set that I'm going to grow. I'm going to do 50 outreach messages every single day, trying to get a position or trying to get mentored by somebody who's already mastered that skill set. I am going to up it to 3 hours of business educational content every day. I'm going to tell my parents I love them once a day, and I'm going to do 100 push-ups a day. Great. You get to the end of the week. You don't sleep until those things are done every single day. You get to the end of the week, more self-confidence. I said I was going to do this, and I did it. I'm a man of my word. Third week, now you're further ahead. Maybe now somebody agreed to mentor you who's good at whatever skill set you decided to choose. And now maybe they tell you, do this, watch this video, finish this course, research this, do XYZ for me, make this graphic or this creative or whatever it is. And you set the target. This is what will get done. I am going to add an extra workout 4 days a week. I am going to tell my parents I love them 3 times a day. I don't know. Whatever you decide, whatever makes sense in that moment. By the end of the
point
week,
is just adding something slowly.
Exactly.
Into it.
And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you actually have belief in yourself, self-confidence.
And then that's when you turn into business.
Exactly. Because that's why at the end of that, once you've done that enough, I got to the point where I have so much self-belief in myself. I know I will succeed at such a degree that I can run away from home without any care in the world, without any consciousness of guilt or anything else, because I have so much belief in myself. I know I will succeed. It's not a question. I will do it because I've built that up over so much period of time. It's no longer a question. That's why I didn't have fear moving away versus everybody else. Oh, I'm scared. I don't want to take risks. Like, shut the up, build your self-confidence and then just go do it. That's how you succeed. So
Hmm.
I think that's what it comes down to, building discipline and then using that for self-confidence and using that self-confidence to take actions that other people would not be willing to take, but you have a greater risk tolerance because you actually believe in yourself.
So if I got this right, and please correct me if I'm wrong, essentially, starting from zero, build a discipline. Take it one step at a time, but ensure that there's small improvements, no matter how small they are, atomic habits, right? Ensure
Exactly.
that that's happening over and over and over again. Even if you relapse, just go back to it. Get back at it,
Exactly. And
right?
don't that's one issue right there. Even if
Hmm.
you relapse, don't even let that be a possibility in your brain. Like
Hmm.
you will not go to sleep. I would tell this to myself every day. I would rather die than not finish this task that I set out for myself. I would rather die than not make this workout as good as it possibly could be and be in the gym for 30 minutes or an hour and a half, whatever it was. I'd rather die. Because when you tell yourself that and you genuinely tell it to yourself, it's the exact same effect as somebody being like, oh, I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad. And then you
Right.
believe it. It's the exact same effect in the reverse. Use it as
Hmm.
a positive. I will not go to sleep. I would rather die than not get this done. And you will get it done. I promise you. I promise you, you will get it done. And so don't even let failure enter your mind. It's not even a possibility.
And it's simpler. I'm probably going to go off on a tangent here. But remember, yesterday we were talking about spiraling up and spiraling down? It's very similar to that. Just the idea that the first thing's going to be the hardest thing on the planet. It's going to be hard. Second thing's going to be slightly easier. It's still going to be hard. But then magically, third and fourth, it's going to happen simultaneously.
Exactly.
Five, six, seven, eight simultaneously. And it just happens over and over again. And then when you look back, or other people are looking at you, they're like, wait, what? How did this guy went from this to this? That's him? No way, right? So, and even for for yourself specifically, if you told yourself a year or 2 years ago that I'm gonna achieve XYZ, here you are today. You probably wouldn't believe it, right?
I would not believe it.
But
Not even close.
so the spiraling effect happens in both ways, going up and going down. If you keep having this persona that, oh no, I did one bad thing, I relapsed this one time. And then that relapse turns into a relapse for other things that you set a boundary you're not going to do. And then you're going to do this thing, and then drugs, and then, worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, spiraling
Yeah.
down. Right? And it's very interesting that it's so weird, but you really get rewarded for the amount of work you put in. And I want to be very clear in the fact that work sometimes loses its definition in the sense that, a janitor is working really hard as well. He's working extremely hard. Sometimes he's working 13, 14 hours to provide for his family and utmost respect towards them.
Yeah.
Genuinely utmost respect. And sometimes it's, they're immigrants. They don't really have that option. Their English isn't that clear. They lose that little touch. But as for someone in my position, where, my English, I would say, is, I don't have an accent, right? I hope so, at least. So I have this new opportunity, this blessing, to where I can now speak to people. I can communicate a little bit more clear. I can learn things a lot faster. I'm in a position, I've got this laptop, I've got pretty good Wi-Fi. That's not something that's very familiar in Pakistan. So now I'm in this position where I can learn at a much bigger rate, and it's almost as if, and I tell my friends this and myself as well, it's almost like you have to do that just because you have that blessing. I have two hands, I've got two eyes, alhamdulillah. Like, thanks to God, I've got all these things. I have to use it to my advantage. I have to use it for the betterment of other people. I have to be able to be in a position where I can give charity, where I can help other people, where I can really make a difference positively in this world.
Exactly.
Right. And with that, Andreas, I really do appreciate your time. We talked about so many different things. We're
We did.
definitely gonna have to have an episode two later on. I can't wait to see where you end up, man.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
let's go back to KKC Consulting viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. Stay tuned in for next week, and we'll see who the next guest is. If you get bored or you're tired of watching KKC Chats, feel free to take a look at KKC Consulting. Thank you so much.
easy.
That was awesome.